Signal is a podcast by the Bucks County Beacon. I'm your host and the Beacon's editor-in-chief, Cyril McGlego. Twice a month, we'll use this space to shine a light on the right-wing extremist currents streaming through Bucks County and beyond. We'll talk to guests who will help listeners navigate these perilous political waters by providing insight, analysis, and organizing solutions so that we can steer the community toward calmer, saner, progressive routes. JoAnn Loulan has been a political activist since college, demonstrating during the Vietnam War and fighting for civil rights, and then after college for lesbian visibility and political rights. Her political work continued with raising money for many Democratic candidates, including Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. In 2017, she started Local Majority, an organization that writes research papers for state legislative candidates in swing states. In 2022, she, along with Tracy Sherman, started the Democratic Messaging Project. The purpose of this group is to work around the algorithm so people know what Democrats are doing, have done, and will do to make lives better. Today we talk about the work these two organizations are doing heading into the 2024 election. Hi, JoAnn. Welcome to The Signal.
Thank you very much for having me today. I really appreciate it. I'm really excited. It's so awesome what it is that you do and your whole team does. I mean, remarkable.
We appreciate that. To start off, how did you become involved in progressive politics?
Well, back in the 70s, really, I started writing about lesbians, and I was a lesbian activist. And so I started writing about lesbian sexuality as how it was. I worked at the UCSF Medical School in the human sexuality department, and that was my specialty. It was back in the day when nobody was really doing that out loud. So it started a whole life for me in terms of being active and being out there. And what started happening was that I started getting a name for myself. I started writing books about lesbian sexuality. And I say that, but I think it's important to know that that was completely connected to politics and the sociology for lesbians, because no one could be out. It was just the beginning of, kind of the third wave of feminism, as I say it, which included, although we had to fight for it at the time, we had to fight Betty Friedan and all the other feminists that were coming out, that lesbians were women too. And because I always say, because I was self-employed as a psychotherapist, I was white, I looked like a girl supposed to look. So I could say whatever I wanted. And in fact, it only enhanced my economic well-being, if that makes sense. I didn't work for anybody, so I could do what I wanted. And because I also went to Northwestern as an undergrad in the theater department, I knew how to talk in a way that people like to listen. And so I then ended up on talk shows. My son, and then I also had a son by a gay man, and we were doing, before what I call the gaby boom, we did artificial insemination that I did myself, that my doctor set me up with. And I was one of like 3 lesbians that were out in the Bay Area having kids that weren't born of a heterosexual relationship. So that's like a long intro to how I got completely established in politics and the movement, and acting out and talking out and demonstrating and being on Oprah a couple of times, and Phil Donahue and Geraldo when he had a talk show, and being very sassy. I had to watch my language because I've got a swearing problem. And so, like saying to Oprah one time, "So have you ever seen Mrs. Smokey Robinson?" And she was like, "What?" And they started the credits right then. It was to the end of the show. And I said, "I'm just asking, have you ever seen Mrs. Smokey Robinson?" Because I was talking up for the fact that lesbians and gay men were not visible. And then when AIDS started, that added a whole other layer of my activism. So that's how that started, and raising money for things like the Women's Building and the National Center for Lesbian Rights. And so that started that. And then I started getting into raising money for Democrats and Democratic politics. That's how all of that started. And then in Obama's second term, when there were these worrisome polls, I started raising big money then for Democratic candidates, and did for Obama, then for Hillary, and now for Biden, or last time for Biden, and now for Biden again. But that didn't seem to be enough, because one of the things that happened during all of my activism was it was clear that state legislative candidates had no research for them. And I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that the state parties didn't provide research. But we also know, which is too much to go into, but the kind of gutting of state parties by the Obama administration. They kind of did their own heady, we're going to do it ourselves thing. But it then really gutted, and we lost 1,000 seats in the state legislature during Obama's terms. So I started an organization called Local Majority. The great thing about where I live, which is in Silicon Valley near Stanford University, is there's lots of intellectuals. There's lots of introverted, really smart people who did not want to go knock doors, who did not want to make phone calls, who did not want to get into texting. All of it felt like too in your face, but they're really brilliant. And I had 6 lawyers, I had 3 former professors, I had tech professionals, I had all kinds of super smart people. I still do. I mean, I say but they joined Local Majority, really excited to do something really concrete for the movement and do more than just give money. So we've written at this point, Local Majority. I say we, it's the royal we. I haven't written any of them, although I did write I did write books, but this is a whole other story. And we've written over 300 papers for state legislative candidates, and we've gotten quite a reputation. We started that in 2017, right when Orange Man got his first run at destroying the democracy. And so we had lots of fodder, and we've gotten such a reputation that last August, a campaign manager from Arizona called me and said, when are we going to get our papers for Arizona? And I said, well, we're still finishing our papers for Virginia this go round, and we're going to start with Arizona in January, which is what we've done. What we do is, because we don't spend any money, it's all volunteer and for Local Majority. We were able to connect with campaigns to find out, what do you need? Finding out from candidates, what do you need? What do you need research on? I mean, we had the main person in Florida that the state party had asked her to run. She was the head of the minority, and they asked her to run for the state Senate. She'd raised $5 million. This is in 2018. It's
Wow.
extremely expensive. Yeah. She was calling us to say, I need research on this. And I'm like, wait, you're the number one person that the party is supporting. What is going on? She goes, I get no research from them. How I like to explain this is to kind of lay people, is that I live where Pacific Gas and Electric is. And if you can believe this, in the state of California, the electric and gas system is privately owned. So I have my beliefs about PG&E, as we call it here, but I can't just, if I were running for office, I can't just go to a debate and go, I think they suck because they're privately owned. I can't just say that. I have to
Sure.
be able to back it up. So my favorite example is in Arizona. One of our education papers was 14 pages long and had 100 references. So that's what we do. Everything is referenced, everything is the truth. It's not our opinion. And just to brag on our group, they reported on Saudi Arabia taking water from Arizona's water table 4 years ago, and it's just now in mainstream press in Arizona because it's now a Democratic governor in Arizona, and they have canceled Saudi Arabia's leases. They grow, just briefly, Saudi Arabia grows alfalfa in Arizona, harvests it, puts it on ships, and takes it back to Saudi Arabia for their livestock because they don't have enough water to raise alfalfa.
Sure.
And Arizona has had a water table problem for 45 years. So anyway, that's what we do with local majority.
So let's just backtrack just for a moment. Why did the Obama administration deprioritize state and local races? And are you seeing a shift with the National Party to kind of reinvest and reprioritize these races?
Yes, absolutely. And I wouldn't say Obama didn't prioritize, but they did their own organization in every state.
Okay,
And that's what the problem was. And they lost 1,000 seats because they didn't have enough people on the ground to deal with it. We have now gained back of those 1,000 since Biden. We have gained back about 700 of those 1,000 seats, and we're still playing catch up. But like in states, local majority often works in states. And if you can believe it, in 2018, Florida was a swing state. And we work in swing states to help with state legislative candidates where there is a narrow majority of Republicans. So in Arizona, for instance, we only need to flip 2 seats in the state House and in the state Senate. They're called different things there, but just for, to make it understandable to people.
sure.
We helped Minnesota get a majority. We helped Virginia flip to Democrat. We've helped Pennsylvania. They only have a 1 seat majority in the state house. But that's what we do. We work with the candidates. Like, for instance, in Arizona, these are we don't go in going, hey, do what Californians think you should do. We go ask, what do you need? So like the water thing was one we didn't know anything about 4 years ago, but a candidate asked us to figure that out. Another candidate this year has said, she's in Tucson, and she said Tucson has no walkability or very little walkability. And here it is, a huge, city that where there's lots of tourists. And so we're doing a paper to talk about the history of how they've gotten rid of walkability. One thing they do have, they have great access to bike lanes, but they don't have walkability. So I'm just talking about, we get down to narrow, small, can be small issues in the state. So that particular candidate can beat out the Republican. And of course, we're doing stuff on abortion and education and birth control, the threat of getting rid of birth control in Arizona, because it's a big threat. So that's what we do. And that's how we help specific candidates that are only a few hundred votes behind somebody else, that they can go into a debate. They can depend on our research. They don't have to look it up themselves. We give them talking points. So it's easy for them. One of my candidates said that she used to keep the talking points on the front seat of her car. Every time she went to knock doors, she'd go through quickly the talking points, and then she would know. She said, I'd sound so smart on the doors, talking to people and in debates.
Sure. And do you have plans to work with any candidates in Pennsylvania this year? Since, like as you mentioned, that the Democrats currently have a 1 seat majority in the House, and the Senate, while it might be a little difficult, is within striking distance if they can flip like 3 or 4 seats.
Right. And what I can do is that'll lead me to the next group, because local majority isn't working in Pennsylvania this cycle. But my other group, Democratic Messaging Project, which I'd like to talk about as well. we are gonna be working quite extensively in Pennsylvania.
And you started, you launched the Democratic Messaging Project with your colleague, Tracy Sherman,
Yes,
just before the 2022 midterm election. Why don't you
exactly.
give us some background into the origin story of the DMP?
So the DMP, again, because I'm so involved in both national and local politics, I realized that well, I realized like I'm a genius or something. Lots of people have realized this that because people would say to me, why isn't Biden saying what it is that he's doing? Why isn't all the different acts that he got passed? How come nobody's talking about it? I said, well, because the mainstream press doesn't want to talk about how great Biden is. Period. End of story. And we've all seen now how the New York Times has turned into a conservative libertarian paper. People are going to, I'm going to get notes about that, but I can prove it. And the latest owner whose grandfather is rolling in his grave, Schultzberger, the newest AG Schultzberger, has said, we're not going to do any different. We're going to do what we're going to do. It's even Steven. Biden's running, Trump's running, and we're going to run equal. And they're basically rarely talking about Trump's threat to democracy, but they are talking a lot about Biden's age. And he's hired his major editor now is also a right wing libertarian. About, I forget, 3 years ago, they hired a climate denier to write their climate columns. So, people need to watch out for the New York Times. It's, there's definitely some great columnists, but overall, the newspaper is, in my opinion, is backing Trump. That's what I think mainstream media and even quote unquote our channel MSNBC. I have my I have my Taylor Swift flag that I put over the television when they have nonstop pictures of Trump on there. Drives me wild. So, and then they put up the polls that are fake. Well, I shouldn't say fake, but they're not, everyone knows they're, the new polls, almost all of them are done on landlines. Okay, anybody under 50 listening to this have a landline? The answer is no. And nobody, and cell phones. And anyone that has a child or a friend or yourself are under 45, you never pick up the cell phone, even when it's your mom calling. There was a great line on a recent TV show that somebody was calling someone, and the answer came on, "Don't be old, text me." And so it's like they don't pick up their phone, they don't call each other. So I got into this thing of the algorithm is working against Democrats. You cannot get anything more than what you already get. So people who could lean towards us if they knew what was happening, we could actually influence Democrats who don't normally vote because they're disenchanted, or independents who lean Democrat. So that's what we did in the midterms in 2022. How we do that is, let me start with our digital in-app ads. What that means is, think of your weather app, sports apps, gaming apps, cooking apps. Any app that you have on your phone can actually get an ad. And there are those, for those of you who know, there are those irritating little ads that come up, little banner ads. But we had 400,000 people go to our website from those ads alone in
Wow.
2022. Yeah. And the guy who places, as I said, I live where there are tech geniuses. So one of our graphics people is a tech genius, and she knows how to place those ads. And for people who don't know, those kinds of ads, you could do a city block in Pennsylvania. Let's just use them as long as we're on them. You could do a city block in Pennsylvania, and only those ads only go to cell phones that are Democrats or leaning independent, leaning Democrats on that city block. So you could send them to 3 houses. You could send them to 7 apartments in an apartment building. It's truly phenomenal. And the guy who the different companies that she used to place those ads, one said to her, that is 25 times our normal to get 400,000 people going to your website from a 26 million impressions, meaning 26 million people saw them, 400,000 went to our website. So we are doubling our buy this year. And I am secretly having a goal of getting 1 million people to go to our website. When you go to our website, because genius techs that are doing everything that I can't do. I'm a great talker. And the genius is there. Have it so that if you are in Pennsylvania, you see one of our ads, you click on it, it's going to take you to a Pennsylvania page that tells you how to register, where to register, who to vote for, because we're very partisan, and why, and little not vignettes, short pieces about what Biden's done, what Fetterman's done, what Shapiro's done, and how, that we need you to vote for the state house and the state senate, and tell them why. The state senate still controls things, the Republicans, and they still want to ban abortion. They still want to ban birth control, which no one believes me. But nobody believed me in 2016 either, when I said, okay, people, now that the Orange Man has won, what's going to happen is states are going to create all the laws in the United States. And nobody believed me then. And then they thought I was out of my mind, that we're going to lose Roe. And then they also thought, there's no way they're going to outlaw birth control. I'm like, yeah, watch them. And of course, now 12 states have basically made it practically impossible to get birth control. So at least my team now doesn't question me. So that's the first thing we do, is the digital in-app ads. We also do big static billboards, and people constantly question me about the value of static billboards because you can't really tell. But what I say is, people who don't vote regularly have to get what they call 6 touches. Seeing a giant billboard in very simple language that, by the way, has all been researched by fabulous researchers, researched down to the word to use, down to the picture. Seeing a giant static billboard every day when you're going to work, or when you're going to pick up your kids from school, or whatever, it's going to be seared into your brain. We start those at the end of September, and they will be there through election day. The other thing that we do, that we've added this year, is doing rolling billboards. Anybody that knows local majority, and we did this in Pennsylvania, speaking again, just to use that as an idea, we rolled static billboards with state legislative candidates' names on them. This is going to be LED lighted billboards that roll, and we can have up to 200 ads on them rotating. In addition, when it stops somewhere, we can have a short vignette, a short video of someone talking about what have the Democrats or a specific candidate done for them in their state. So there's that. And then the other thing that we're doing, in Pennsylvania, we're running 3 of those, and we're raising money for the other states. But in all 4 of our states, which are Arizona, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, we are working in those 4 states, because those 4 states, by about 100,000 votes, will decide who the president is. So we're doing it in those states, and we're running rolling billboards in all those states. So I'll tell you about how we figure that out in a minute, because the last thing I want to talk about is our condoms. And everybody is like, condoms? Yeah. On our condoms, it says, protect yourself from Republicans, vote for Democrats, and it has our QR code on it. How are we going to distribute these condoms? We are working with a feminist majority who registers and educates students on college campuses. They're going to be in about 7 states. We have ordered 300,000 condoms. and with this message on them, and they are going to hand them out kind of like, here's your little prize for listening to what we're talking about. So it's not just going to be in bowls around campus, it's going to be strategically passed out to students that are hearing about politics and how to vote on campus, et cetera, et cetera. So those are the four main things we're doing to get around the algorithm. We're going to, so back to the ads for just a minute. So we're going to place about 60 million ads in the four states. Where anyway, it's very exciting.
Yeah, and just I mean the delivery of the campaign messaging is just really fascinating with what you're doing. But what about the messaging yourself? Like, what would you say like effective campaign messaging looks like, and why do you think why do you think some campaigns fall short? Or can you give an example, just kind of like a generic example of where people fall short with trying to get their message out?
Yeah. So one of our main researchers, Celinda Lake and Mike Lux, when I say ours, we buy their research, and Democracy Partners, who has a lot of researchers out there. So one of the stories that I recently read, who knows where, since I read all day long, someone said, "Do you read books?" And I said, "Who has time to read books? I'm saving democracy. I have to read, I have to read the immediate information that I can get a hold of." So one of the stories that I read, I'm sorry, whoever wrote it, that I can't give you credit. It wasn't me. But what they said on there is Democrats have to be bold about abortion. That's to start with this thing. You can read anywhere, oh, Latinos don't like abortion. Wrong. 70% of Latinos believe that you should be registered voting Latinos, believe that women should have a right to birth control and abortion. 70%. It's not like, oh, because they're Catholic, they don't believe in abortion. Wrong. A majority of Catholic women who are registered to vote believe in the right to have abortions and birth control. I finally got my single issue, very Catholic cousin to come over to our side with Hillary, because I said, you cannot vote on one issue alone. But being bold about abortion and birth control, and the research is out are saying abortion is the biggest word that you should use. Birth control, very useful on college campuses. So we're doing all of that. That's that's what they said in this article. Democrats who are being mealy mouth about abortion are not going to get as many votes. And it doesn't matter if you're in a conservative state. Women, it's like when the whole thing came out in Arizona that the Supreme Court said that all abortions were illegal, period, end of story, no exceptions. The men in the state legislature, number two in the state party, in the Republican state party structure, he said women wouldn't need birth control, much less abortions, if they weren't so promiscuous.
Jesus.
Yeah, take that in. He is the number two Republican in the state of Arizona. And so a little while later in a party in a bipartisan conversation, there was a conversation because most of these entities are run by men on both sides of the aisle, said, I don't know if women are going to remember that by November. I was like, I want you to keep thinking that. Yes, I think us silly little ladies are going to forget about it by November. So you can count on our vote for people who think women have no rights. That's one of the things that's really important is for a Democratic candidate to get out there and say what they believe. And even if they themselves have a religious or whatever belief that people shouldn't have abortions, they still, it's like even our president, President Biden is a devout Catholic. He has a trouble with abortion, but he believes that every woman has a right to control her own uterus. So, and the other guy, the orange man, has said that he is proud to have gotten rid of abortion nationwide. This is another kind of aside for any young people listening to this who are really upset with Biden and his role with Israel. I want to agree with you 100%. However, if you don't vote for Biden, you are giving a vote to the orange man, even if you don't vote for him, because leaving that blank, leaving the presidential blank, will be a vote for the orange man. And this will be the last protest you will be involved in, because he has said that on day one, he is going to declare martial law if he gets the orange man, if he gets in office, I should say his name, Trump gets in office. He has said on day one, he is going to declare martial law so there can be no demonstrations around the country. You need to take this very seriously. These could be the last demonstrations you do. And President Biden came out and said that he wants to protect a person's right to protest and he wants to protect the rule of law, both. So you will not be able to protest if Trump becomes president. And I want to make that really clear. And you will not have birth control and you will not have abortion rights.
So, in addition to abortion rights, women's bodily autonomy, and essentially the survival of our democracy, are there
Yes.
like one or two other issues that you think are going to really drive voters to the polls in November?
Well, what's really difficult, although we're going to be putting this information out there, is that when people say we weren't better off than we were 4 years ago, it's just patently absurd. 1 million people had died of COVID. The Trump had said people should inject bleach into their bodies. People were dying because they weren't taking care of themselves. It's very, very important that people understand that with healthcare, he has said, I want to get rid of the ACA, which many people call Obamacare. He has said he wants to get rid of it. Whether or not you have quote unquote Obamacare, it's called something different in every state. It covers, no matter what health insurance you have, it covers pre existing conditions. 141 million people in the United States of America, of which it's 310 million people live here, have pre existing conditions. Currently, your health insurance has to cover that. I myself have been 2-time breast cancer survivor, and I would have not been, and my first one was when I was 44. I would have not been able to have any sort of healthcare coverage for my breast cancer from then on if they didn't cover pre-existing conditions. So it's really important that people take healthcare into consideration when they're making a vote. For young people, you can currently be on your parents' health insurance until you're 26. That will be gone. Really important for people to understand what healthcare means. In addition, drug prices. The Democrats have worked very hard to reduce the cost of medication. So, for insulin, let's just say, a very large percentage of our country has to have insulin for diabetes. We could go into all the reasons, but let's just stay on this. So now it is $35 a month, and many pharmacy organizations have just followed suit, and they're all $35 a month. For people who don't have diabetes and didn't have to get insulin before, it was between $700 and $1,500 a month for insulin. It's now $35. It is the first time in our history that Medicare has been able to negotiate prices. So those are two really important things. Healthcare, we could talk about economy in which there is low unemployment and wages have risen above inflation in Biden's 3.5 years. But there is literally no way we're going to get people to believe that, because right now it's expensive to buy groceries. It's expensive once again to buy gas. But what the other piece that Democrats are doing, and Biden is running this, is finding organizations that are gouging the public. You may have heard things of all kinds of food organizations, their profits have gone up in the last 4 years. Their profits have gone up by between 25 and 75%. So he is really going to do something about that. One other quick thing, he has created 58,000 projects around the country that will employ people that are already employing people to make broadband in the entire country. You may not know this, but 50% of the country does not have access to the internet. Children who live in those areas, their parents take them to the local penitentiary and sit in the parking lot because they all have internet. And that's where they do their homework. So those are a few of them, and I know it's a lot, and there's so many more, but eh, I have to, I could go on and on and on. We could do this for 5 hours, but
Well, and then just a note, like with regards to like the corporate profiteering and what's been kind of labeled as greedflation. Pennsylvania's U.S. Senator Bob Casey has been really kind of like a leading voice on kind of exposing how these companies are just jacking up prices just to line their own pockets at the expense of working class people and their customers.
well, and that's, by the way, thank you for saying that.
Sure.
It jogs my memory. One of the things that we're doing is that's how we found you, Cyril,
Mhm.
is we're going into the states that we're working in, the 4 states. And again, we're not saying, ooh, California's here, we're going to save you. That's not all what we're saying. We're going to each state and we're working with, at this point, about 50 grassroots groups in our 4 states, or organizations like your own, newspapers, etc. So we're going to the state and saying, what should we say? So besides our researched wordings, which they're researching in all the states as well, but we're going to grassroots. What are you seeing? So in your last election, for the closed primary for the Republican president, I know you know this, but not everybody knows this, that 25% of Republicans, because it was a closed primary, only Republicans could vote. In the state, 25% of people Republicans voted for Nikki Haley, who dropped out of the race 50 days before that primary. I have been saying on our advertising, we should be saying Republicans because all Republicans are MAGA now. Well, the people in your great state of Pennsylvania said to us, oh, no, no, no. You have to always say MAGA. You have to say MAGA Republicans because we want those other Republicans to know that it's safe to come over and vote for us, that we are going to help anybody, Republicans and Democrats, get our country back. Those of us that believe in democracy. So it's things like that that are really important for us to hear. So we will, of course, advertise for Bob Casey. We will advertise for you back to your state legislative candidates. We will make sure that in Bucks County, we say, these are the people to vote for in your state. We, of course, want to get rid of Fitzgerald, who is a U.S. Congressperson in the House.
Yes,
So we're going to
Fitzpatrick.
do all that.
Yes, and we have a great candidate here in Bucks County, Ashley Ehas, who's running against him.
Yes, and we will advertise the heck out of Ashley.
Well, great. And then finally, how can people get involved and to kind of join you in your efforts to make sure that Pennsylvania is voting Democratic come November?
First of all, they can go to Beacon Fest.
That's right.
Beacon Fest, that your newspaper and what this podcast is being brought to you by, is doing Beacon Fest on June 1st. A lineup of amazing music artists, and then activists such as our group are going to be there giving all kinds of information. And if you want a condom that says vote for, protect yourself from Republicans, vote for Democrats, come to Beacon Fest. We are going to be tabling with Indivisible of Bucks County, and they are going to distribute our condoms. So come get some condoms for yourself. And can you tell us where it is, Cyril?
Sure, yes. So Beacon Fest will be at Snipes Farm in Morrisville on June 1st. It'll run from 3 to 9 p.m. like JoAnn said, we have an amazing lineup of musicians, which includes Emily Drinker in their band, Shug Daniels, John Beecher, Allright Jr., and Baron Tiger. And, in addition to the Democratic Messaging Project and Bucks Indivisible, there'll be other, pro-democracy organizations tabling the event and who are helping sponsor it, which includes the New Pennsylvania Project, Conservation Voters of Pennsylvania, PFLAG, the Bucks County Democratic Party, and a whole lot more. So we'll have a link in the show notes, so that you'll be able to buy tickets, and then you can hook up with the Democratic Messaging Project when you get there.
And there's going to be like Indivisible does all kinds of stuff to help get people out to vote and to educate people, along with all those other amazing organizations. By the way, we're working with almost all of them, and we're ticking it off. We will get to all the rest of them as well to tell us where should that was the other thing, our rolling billboards, where should they go? That's the other thing, not just messaging. But and anybody that's hearing this, if you know you're going to have an event, people say, well, we don't know when we're going to do events, but we're trying to connect with you now, so we know where to roll our rolling billboards, because they're going to bring a lot of press. We got a Rachel Maddow with static ones from Virginia. So imagine with our rolling all lit up and, ads flipping around and little, people doing that. So we want to know where to roll our billboards. We're, by the way, going to roll one at the RNC at the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee. And we're going to have our condoms available there and some other surprises.
Well, that should be fun.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, JoAnn, thanks so much for the work that you do, and thanks for taking the time to come on to The Signal. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me, Cyril, and thank you for everything that you do, including Beacon Fest, because it's amazing just for people who don't know what the Bucks County Beacon writes about and how they do it. Go online, because they have everything you want to know about Pennsylvania, in my opinion. So
Thanks
thank
so
you,
much.
Carol.
Thank you. This has been The Signal, a podcast by the Bucks County Beacon. I'm Cyril Migaleko, editor-in-chief and host. For more progressive news, analysis, and opinion from Bucks County and beyond, go to www.buckscountybeacon.com.